Good morning, everybody, and welcome this unique day. It's the third anniversary of leaving the European Union, and welcome to the launch of my new constituency campaign office here in Hartlepool. I'm going to be standing at the next general election. Here, I stood here 3 years ago and looking forward to campaigning. Hartlepool, a fantastic community town, but like so many towns, so many coastal communities, utterly let down by the two main parties. Brexit, that great opportunity that we campaigned, we fought so hard for. Great potential. And yet the truth is, on this third anniversary, we can see clearly that the con-socialist Tories have utterly failed to take advantage of this opportunity. They failed to control our borders. We've got uncontrolled, lawful immigration, and we've got chaotic, shambolic, illegal immigration across the Channel. Complete and utter failure by the Tories. They've failed to take advantage of the economic opportunities. They haven't cut taxes, they haven't cut VAT, they haven't cut the environmental levies that they could do. They haven't even cut some of the daft EU regulations. In fact, they're thinking of delaying the ability to do that years and years. And tragically, where they've also failed is with regard to the union of the United Kingdom, because they've betrayed Northern Ireland. And I fear, with the protocol and the changes being negotiated at the moment, that they're going to sell our great country, our great United Kingdom, even more down the river. They failed to take advantage of the opportunities for our fishing communities, such as here in Hartlepool. But this platform of opportunity of Brexit, it's still there to be done. We can take advantage, and it was absolutely the right thing to do. But only Reform UK, of course, formerly the Brexit Party, it was thanks to us that actually Brexit was done. Only we now are committed to taking advantage of these opportunities. Only Reform UK has got the clear, important, effective plans in order to control immigration and to stop the boats. Only Reform UK has got a bold plan that will help the least well off, the lowest paid, the most with our tax plans. And only Reform UK has got proper plans to cut daft EU regulation. And only Reform UK will get cheaper energy using our British energy treasure. Which brings me on to this other really important issue, which is our critical national infrastructure, our utilities, many of which are actually monopolies. Our water, our power stations like nuclear, like gas, coal, biomass, our gas distribution network, our electricity grid network. These are all critical parts of the UK's national infrastructure, and yet the costs have soared in recent years, and the lucky owners of these utilities are making off like bandits with vast operating profits. And you know that feeling in your gut? You know when something's not right? You know that feeling when you're being ripped off, you're being completely legged over, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. Well, that's the reality with these monopolies, these utilities. So who does own these monopolies, our water, our power, our distribution networks? Well, Reform UK, we've done detailed, painstaking research over the last month. Not only do the Tories sell all of our utilities in a way that no other country has done, but they've allowed the vast majority of them to be foreign owned in a way that's quite extraordinary. And I think people will be truly shocked. Our water companies, England and Wales, are the only countries, I think, in the world to have allowed the complete privatisation of our water and our sewage. 68% now foreign owned. Annual operating profits across the water companies, £3 billion a year. And 2 of the 13 companies, in fact, coincidentally, the 2 companies involved here in Hartlepool, Last year they took out dividends of £500 million. Operating profits you couldn't dream of. It's hard to imagine how that has happened. And yet the regulator, asleep at the wheel, is allowing huge price increases even as we speak for these water companies. 10% plus. That's just water. Our nuclear power stations, including just down the road here at Hartlepool, 100% foreign owned. Our gas power stations, 85% foreign owned. Our coal power stations, 100% foreign owned. And then our renewable industry, that is of course lauded by Westminster, all the politicians thinking this great opportunity for green British jobs. Well, it turns out that our offshore wind turbines, 83% of them are foreign owned. So it actually turns out that green jobs are not so much British jobs. The biggest single owner of our wind turbines is the Danish taxpayer. So we British taxpayers are paying huge inflation-linked subsidies to create ever larger profits for the Danish taxpayer. What's the advantage of that? Our gas pipe network, 89% foreign owned, with operating margins approaching 40% a year. For a monopoly, there's no choice. We have to use the gas pipe network. And yet operating margins, 40%. Our electricity network, 79% foreign owned, with even higher operating margins, a whisker under 50%. For a monopoly, those of us in private business, these are margins we could only dream of, and that's in a competitive world. But for monopoly, really? So that, in summary, the total ownership of all of our monopoly utilities, it turns out 87% of all our monopolies are indeed overseas owned. So not only have the Tories sold off our water, our power, our distribution networks, but they've allowed billions and billions of pounds every year of operating profits to disappear overseas. The biggest single lucky owner of our utilities is a Chinese billionaire who's making operating profits of £1.5 billion a year. But under Chinese law, essentially, he has to do what the Chinese communist regime would say. Is it really strategically smart that we allow the biggest single owner of our critical national infrastructure to be owned in this way? These huge profits to be going overseas? I don't think so. And actually, the majority of the British people don't think so either. For example, when the British people were polled about the ownership of the water companies, over 80% said they wanted the water companies to be renationalised. Now you might say, well, hang on, there's regulators for each industry that protect all of this, but protect standards. Well, with the water companies, they haven't stopped them dumping sewage into our seas and our rivers, whilst making off with these huge billions of pounds of operating companies. And likewise, in some of the other sectors. The truth is, our regulators have been asleep at the wheel. They've allowed vast operating profits to be made. And the owners of these companies, what they've done with very clever financiers, very clever accountants and lawyers, they've loaded these companies with mountains of debt. So they've only put actually a tiny amount of real cash, real hard equity into the businesses, and then they've taken them out the back door, the side door. You've got to read into about page 130 of all the accounts to find out how they take out these profits very often, through things like high interest shareholder loans. We, the British people, we know something's wrong. We know we're being ripped off. We know we're being legged over. And this is how. This is why. And it's not right. These owners have run rings around our regulators. And no other sensible nation has allowed this. I repeat, no one else has privatised their water companies in the same way that we have. Strategic ownership of critical national infrastructure should be owned by the British people. So the Tories sold Britain, and yet the Labour Party are not interested. Keir Starmer, when he was campaigning to be leader, he said he wanted to renationalise the utilities. Well, that was the last we heard of that. He's not interested. Only Reform UK will take back control of our British water, our British power, our critical British infrastructure back into British hands. Because for our critical infrastructure, that is the right thing to do. And the right model is actually that 50% should be in public ownership, 50% should be owned by British pension funds on behalf of British pensioners, and these companies should be privately managed. So you get that fantastic, unique, win-win-win combination of public ownership, British pension funds, but well managed by the private sector. The benefit then is that instead of being ripped off, we'll cut costs for ordinary British people. We'll take back control for the British people. And of course, that was the whole point of Brexit, to take back control. And yet it seems that only Reform UK actually wants to do that. And what I say in summary is we can take back control. We can make Britain great. So let's reform UK. Thank you very much indeed.